Our journey begins in the mighty empire of Persia, where the Jewish people lived in exile under the rule of the powerful King Xerxes. Among them was a young woman named Esther, graceful, wise, and destined for greatness. Her story would soon change the fate of an entire nation. In the capital city of Susa, King Xerxes threw a lavish celebration that lasted for 180 days, flaunting his riches and power. When it ended, he held a final 7-day feast for all the people. On the last day, filled with wine and pride, he summoned his queen, Vashti, to display her beauty to the guests. But Vashti refused. Her defiance enraged the king. Advised by his counselors, Xerxes stripped her of her title and began the search for a new queen. The call went out across the kingdom for the most beautiful young women to be brought to the palace. Among them was Esther, also known as Hadassah, humble Jewish orphan raised by her cousin Mordecai. Following Mordecai's advice, she kept her heritage hidden. For a year, Esther underwent beauty treatments under the care of Haggai, the royal eunuch. When her moment arrived, Esther's poise and charm captivated especially the king. Xerxes placed the crown upon her head, and Esther became queen, though her secret identity remained unknown. Meanwhile, Mordecai, who worked near the palace gate, overheard a plot to assassinate the king. He quickly passed the news to Esther, who reported it to Xerxes, giving Mordecai full credit. The culprits were caught and executed, and the incident was logged in the royal records. Soon after, a man named Haman was elevated to a high-ranking position by the king. He demanded that everyone bow to him, but Mordecai refused. Infuriated, Haman plotted not just Mordecai's death, but the extermination of all Jews in the empire. To choose a date, he cast lots called Pur and settled on the 13th day of the 12th month. He approached the king, presenting the Jews as a rebellious, separate people who did not follow Persian laws. Haman offered a vast sum of silver in exchange for permission to wipe them out. Xerxes agreed. The decree went out swiftly. On a single day, all Jews young and old, women and children were to be destroyed. Susa fell into confusion, while Haman and the king sat down to drink. When Mordecai heard of the decree, he tore his clothes, put on sackcloth and ashes, and mourned loudly in the streets. Across the provinces, the Jews wept, fasted, and cried out in anguish. Esther's servants reported Mordecai's grief to her. Deeply troubled, she sent fresh clothes, but he refused them. She then dispatched Hathach, a trusted eunuch, to find out what was wrong. Mordecai relayed the details of the plot and urged Esther to speak to the king. But Esther hesitated. Anyone who approached the king uninvited faced death unless he extended his golden scepter. Mordecai's reply was firm. Don't think you'll escape just because you're in the palace. If you remain silent, deliverance will come another way, but you and your family will be lost. Who knows? Perhaps you were made queen for such a time as this. Esther's resolve hardened. She sent a message back. Gather the Jews in Susa, fast for me. Don't eat or drink for 3 days. I'll do the same. Then I'll go to the king. If I die, I die. On the 3rd day, Esther dressed in royal robes and stood in the inner court. When Xerxes saw her, he was pleased. He held out the golden scepter and asked what she desired of him, up to half the kingdom. Esther invited the king and Haman to a private banquet. There, she asked them to return the next day for another feast where she would reveal her true request. Haman left that banquet full of pride, but seeing Mordecai still refusing to bow enraged him. At home, his wife and friends encouraged him to build a tall pole and asked the king to have Mordecai executed on it. Haman, delighted by the idea, had the pole constructed. That same night, the king couldn't sleep. He ordered the royal records to be read aloud, and he was reminded of how Mordecai had once saved his life. What was done to honor him? Xerxes asked. Nothing, his attendants replied. As morning broke, Haman entered the court, ready to request Mordecai's death. But before he could speak, The king asked, "What should be done for the man the king wishes to honor?" Assuming the honor was for himself, Haman proposed a grand display of royal robes, a noble steed, and a public parade. To his horror, the king ordered him to do exactly that for Mordecai. Haman had to personally lead Mordecai through the streets, shouting his praise. Humbled and furious, he returned home in shame. But there was no time to recover. The king's messengers arrived to escort him to Esther's second banquet, where the queen's true purpose would soon be revealed. At the second banquet, the king and Haman joined Esther once again. As they drank wine, Xerxes asked her, "Queen Esther, what is your request? Whatever it is, it will be granted even up to half my kingdom." Esther took a deep breath. The moment had come. "If I have found favor with you, O king," she said, "spare my life and the lives of my people, for we have been sold to be destroyed, killed, and annihilated." The king's eyes narrowed. Who would dare to do such a thing? Esther turned to her guest. "The enemy is this vile Haman." The room fell silent. Haman froze, horrified. Xerxes, enraged, stormed out into the garden to collect himself. Haman, realizing his life was in danger, fell at Esther's feet, begging for mercy. When the king returned and saw Haman sprawled on the queen's couch, his fury deepened. "Would he even assault the queen while I'm in the house?" he thundered. At that moment, one of the eunuchs spoke up. "There is a pole 75 feet high set up by Haman at his house. He intended it for Mordecai, who saved your life. Impale him on it," the king commanded. And so, Haman was executed on the very pole he had prepared for Mordecai. The king's wrath subsided, but the danger had not yet passed. The decree Haman had set in motion still remained sealed with the king's signet and unchangeable under Persian law. Once more, Esther pleaded with the king. Moved by her courage and tears, Xerxes gave Mordecai his signet, ring the symbol of royal authority, appointed him to Haman's former position. Esther and Mordecai swiftly drafted a new decree. It allowed the Jews to unite and defend themselves on the very day they were meant to be destroyed. The edict was sent out to all 127 provinces from India to Cushan, every language and dialect. Joy returned to the Jewish people. In every city, there was celebration and gladness. On the day of the attack, the tables turned. The Jews struck down their enemies and triumphed. Even in Susa, the palace city, they prevailed. Queen Esther requested one more day for her people in Susa to finish the battle, and the king granted it. Mordecai, once a quiet guardian at the gate, now walked in royal robes of blue and white with a great crown of gold. His honor spread throughout the empire. To commemorate their deliverance, the Jews established an annual feast called Purim, named after the lots Haman had cast. It would be a time of joy, generosity, and remembering how sorrow had been turned to celebration. Esther's bravery and Mordecai's wisdom saved the nation. Though the name of God is never directly mentioned in their story, his presence is woven through every moment. This tale reminds us, even in silence, even in exile, even when the odds seem stacked against us, God is always working behind the scenes. And sometimes, he calls us to stand up, speak out, and risk everything for such a time as this. And that, friends, is the incredible story of Esther, an orphan girl who became a queen and saved the nation. A reminder that courage, faith, and timing can change the course of history. If this story inspired you, don't forget to hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Subscribe for more powerful and cinematic retellings of Bible stories, and be sure to tap the notification bell so you never miss a new episode. Got a favorite Bible character or moment you want us to bring to life next? Drop it in the comments below. We read every one. Until next time, stay bold, stay faithful, and remember, you were made for such a time as this.